Hello everybody, welcome back to the I Review Your Pokemon series. And in this episode, we're going to be going over none other than this Wigglytuff that was sent in by Nirvano. Now, Nirvano sent in Wiarah here, I think that's how it's pronounced anyway, and their question comes with this. Well, I've already invested in my Pokemon up to level 60. I have a question. Should I end my search for Wigglytuff and invest golden seeds in this Pokemon, or would it be better to continue looking for one with better stats? I see that this Pokemon has both positive and negative aspects. The good, triple skill trigger at level 75 and Berry Finding S. The bad, helping speed reduction and no inventory up. Although it has triple skill trigger, it only reaches 84 PR on Rain on X, while I've seen other Pokemon of other species with triple skill triggers that can exceed 90. This makes me question whether it's really worth investing in it. While I have other healers, I'd like to have at least one of each species for Expert mode. My main question would be, considering these advantages and disadvantages, do you think it's worth investing my golden seeds into this Pokemon, or should I continue looking for a better Wigglytuff? And like I said, this is Nirvano. And a bit of very important context here, Nirvano is a free-to-play player, so gold seeds are a really, really limited resource for them. So that's kind of why it is. Well, this Wigglytuff, I gotta say, you've already put 1,500 sleep hours into it. You already have that ribbon built up there, and the reason why I picked this one for discussion is not necessarily because the question was all that interesting to me. It is an interesting question, don't get me wrong, a very interesting dilemma, but more because I wanted to make a point about PR. Now, a lot of the community lifts up PR as they look at the PR as a fixed rating, that is the value of your Pokemon, and that really isn't the case. The PR of the Pokemon is going to vary from account to account based off what your Rain on X settings are and your specific playstyles, which is why I honestly kind of really hate when people evaluate their Pokemon, or just say, here's the PR of my Pokemon. What is the value of it? Is that worth investing? Without any other context, you can't really take PR at its word because it can mean a lot of different things. Now, I will say, to Nirvano's credit here, they are evaluating based off expected skill count, which generally speaking is what you want to be looking for in a Wigglytuff, is the healing value. But the real question is this worth the invest? Now, for comparison, I actually threw a PR calculation myself, and just to show an example of how it doesn't come out the same, on mine it actually rates it a little bit lower, a little bit lower overall, it looks like. 88, 88, 77, 75, 75 is what they have. Mine's 87, 87, but then a little bit higher at the mid ranks, and then spiking back up a little bit again in the end. And that's just because it really is difficult to attune all this information correctly. And it can vary just based upon, do you have a gold skill locked? Additionally, it does account for inventory, which it does specifically say. But inventory is going to be different as the Pokemon levels up and gets greater access to more ribbons. And that's an important thing here to look at with Wiarah having access to a ribbon, a 1,000 hour ribbon. And I'm sure if you're using it as your healer, it won't be too long before it hits a 2,000 hour ribbon. And ribbons specifically benefit Berry Finding S healers significantly more than other ones because it kind of counteracts the fact that it clogs that inventory a bit more. And meanwhile, other non-Berry Finding S healers would have the greater inventory just by default because their inventory is effectively doubled compared to them without it. So it really does. It doesn't encapsulate the full picture when you just look at PR, and that's really kind of the point that I wanted to make. Now, something that I've been made aware of, Rain on X, and I discussed this in one of my other videos on this exact series, Rain on X really doesn't evaluate energy perfectly. If you go through the whole energy curve analysis process, and it basically just creates an average. And it assumes that it gets the average number of procs per day, and then assumes that average number of procs, and then applies that energy to it, and then based off of that, it applies an additional amount of procs based off the energy that it would have with the energy curve, and it eventually cuts off so it doesn't end up with just the more energy infinitely going on and on. But it does assume averages. It doesn't account for bad days having worse days realistically, because the energy on those bad days is going to make the healer help slower, which means the healer is no longer operating at the average expected bonus. So Ranonex, the average system is great for many different ways, but something that we can do is we can actually take, for energy calculations, I think Neroli's lab is actually much better suited, because the way they calculate things is actually based on a Monte Carlo simulation, which allows us to actually account for things like the more energy, and the less energy, the worse the day is going to be. So I think Neroli's lab, one thing that they do better, significantly better, is energy and that system, just because of how it is based on a Monte Carlo simulation. So just for comparison's sake, I threw the Pokemon in here, the Wigglytuff, to see how many procs on average it gets per day. I think this is a much better thing to evaluate by. Now, I've seen some people in the past suggest 5.2 procs per day minimum, but I want people to consider additional things because, one, if you're not running a good camp ticket and you run alongside a help bonus Pokemon, that does increase it just to 4.1. Additionally, if you're looking at primarily just skill boosted weeks, that can maybe even be 4.9 if you're willing to add a good camp ticket on there. If it adds skill boost, then that can also make other variants. And if you're looking at expert mode, that may increase the frequency of the Pokemon as well, maybe increase their skill trigger rate. You'll hit higher numbers with the modifiers applied to this Pokemon. But that being said, 3.8. What does 3.8 procs per day actually look like when it comes to healing? Well, if we do the basic energy curve analysis that I've done in many other videos, this is the base one, roughly a 1.5786 times modifier. If you were to apply a 3.8 times per day procs of 18.1 energy, then on average, it's yielding a 2.0668 times multiplier. Now, this can vary. It can be a bit more optimistic, one might say, if it front loads those procs. It can be more conservative if it backloads those procs a little bit more. This is called a conservative skill recovery curve, but realistically it's not that conservative because all of the procs could happen right before bed. And if that happens, then the Pokemon are going to be at a lot lower energy throughout the day, and then the healer is going to heal even less. So this energy curve analysis is not perfect, but on average, you're looking at a 2.0668 times multiplier, which is roughly a 31% boost from the base. Now, if we were to compare it to itself, but with helping bonus, then that's 4.1 procs, as I showed before. That's a 2.0919 modifier, or roughly 32.5%. So, depending on how many help bonus Pokemon you have on your team, it does help that healer a bit more, and it helps that healer to boost the rest of the team a bit more. Now, if you were to have a Wigglytuff that has triple trigger, like the one that you were theorizing, just to show this is the stats that I put on this guy, help with speed M, skill trigger M, skill trigger S. You can't get much better than this other than having nature lining up as well, or helping bonus applied as well. 4.7 procs per day for the Wigglytuff. Applying that logic, it comes out to 2.1357, which is a 35.3% boost. Now, compared to the 31%, that is a difference of about 4.1% productivity value on your Pokemon. That is less than what a help bonus stack does, but help bonus on the healer, as we know, is very powerful. I've talked about that plenty of times before in my videos. So, realistically, if it's like having, let's say, 80% of a helping bonus, that's really kind of what the difference you're looking at here is. And that in itself is very, very powerful. So I can understand the case for wanting a stronger healer. And realistically, even that 4.7 doesn't quite meet the 5.2 that I've seen thrown out by some Reddit users. Actually, I think the recommendation was 5.25. That's usually the number that I default to when I'm setting production comparisons. But Now, the last part that I wanted to discuss, though, is the Berry Finding S. Berry Finding S, as we know, is a very powerful sub-skill. It doubles the berry productivity on skill specialists, but unfortunately this one's held back a little bit by the speed of help down nature. Now, speed of help down, I'd say generally overlook it. This is still a net positive nature, especially since they had the buff to speed of help down natures. It really isn't much of a drawback. The speed of help down at level 100 will be completely counteracted by the level 100 subskill of Help Speed S. That is how weakly the speed of help down impacts a Pokemon negatively these days. It is literally Help Speed S plus speed of help down is ever so slightly faster than just a neutral Pokemon. Not by much, but it's practically neutral. And if you were able to sub-skill seed this, which you probably wouldn't given that you're free to play and it could misfire on the ingredient finding, then it would become even better than neutral if you eventually got it to level 100. Now, I'm not saying take it all the way to level 100, but it's just a comparison. Now, unfortunately, though, that help speed down actually drags back the berry productivity as well as the skill productivity. So what difference does that actually make on the productivity of the team? Well, just for comparison's sake, I threw together a team of 2 Raichus with alright stats and favored berry, 2 generalist Pokemon with the idea that maybe you can have 2 more specialized ones for the island, wherever you're at, and 2 more generalists, and then the Wigglytuff, just to see how it compares. And without the Wigglytuff having favored berry, then this team comes in at roughly 1.9 million strength, whereas if we were to compare to the Wigglytuff that I showed earlier, the boost that it's giving to the rest of the team is actually performing better, with 1.914 million. But, if we are to now give them Fairy Berry, as if the Wigglytuff had Favored Berry, which, if you're really considering investing multiple healers, because of the purposes of Expert Mode, then realistically they're going to have Fairy Berry, because they're going to be trying to remain on type with the Expert bonuses. It's 1.97 mil here, without the Berry Finding S. And if we add that to this one as well, then you're looking at 1.995. So the team as a whole becomes better when the Berry Finding S Wigglytuff has Favored Berry, compared to a more skill-focused Wigglytuff. Now, ideally in Expert Mode, you probably don't have generalists like Golduck. You probably have more Pokemon that are matching Favored Berry just because that is the goal of Expert Mode and the way you're designing the teams. And you're probably more trying to cross ingredient thresholds, maybe rotating the team as time is needed. So there is a bit more nuance here. But overall, my assessment, is this Wigglytuff worth investment? Is it worth the main skill seeds? Well, I would say if you're going to keep using it, then yes. If you're going to be using it, a skill seed put on a Pokemon that you're using is better than a skill seed sitting in the bag. Given that you have it at level 60, you've slept with it for 1,500 hours almost, and it has that ribbon, it's probably worth your investment just because it seems like you're using it anyway. Do I think it's worth that amount of investment and that time spent? Probably. I mean, maybe. It's got a lot going for it, but like you said, it also has some bad. If it had just like one more trigger, this would be an instant invest. If it had, maybe instead of ingredient finding, maybe some inventory just to counteract that Berry Finding S a little bit more, the negative downsides of Berry Finding S a little bit more, then maybe it would really be an instant invest. But as it stands, I'd say I can see the case for it. It's already level 60. It's already got the levels going for it. It's got a main skill up nature, and eventually at level 75, it eventually gets to 4.4 procs per day. As you can see here from Neroli's Labs skill trigger thing. And you can push that further with Good Camp Ticket or help bonus Pokemon on the team, making it more reliable. And at 4.4, it becomes just really, really close to that triple trigger one. Going from a 35.3% boost to a 34.2%. Only about 1.1% difference. That's very, very minuscule. So it would take until level 75 to really become what I would consider to be good. And also, I really wouldn't worry about PR past that point, because it's evaluating for every single possible combination of Pokemon at level 75 what it can do at that point, and that makes things extra complicated. And it'll also account for every single Pokemon that doesn't come online until level 75 that you probably wouldn't invest anyway, because they're not necessarily good up until that point. So there's more to be considered with PR. PR is a valuable tool, but it's not perfect. And I think this is one example where it's not giving you the full picture here, and I would consider more factors and say, you know what, it's probably worth investment, even though it doesn't look great on paper. But if you want a more reliable healer, you can get yourself a Gardevoir. I know you said you're looking for other healers. You can get yourself a Palmot for when you need the more reliable healer, and then this can just be your fairy type option. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for a free-to-play player, but you are a day one player, so you might have a decent amount of seeds stockpiled up, and that might be something that's actually worth consideration for you at this point. So, lots of things to consider. I'm not going to give a for sure answer, because honestly, I'm not 100% certain, but I hope that I've at least given you, Nirvano, a bit more information and guidance as to why you might make a decision one way or the other. But anyway, that is it for today's video, so if you have enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you want to submit your own Pokemon for review, then there are two ways to go about that. Either submit it via the Google form in the description, which I think I'm going to overhaul a little bit here soon. It's got a few more questions that I'm not really using that information compared to what it has been in the past, and I think I'm going to restructure it so that you can submit multiple photos if you want to, because that's been an ongoing request. So I think I'm going to restructure that form. But it is in the description if you want to fill it out and get a chance for your Pokemon to be submitted here. The other option is to submit via the hashtag YouTube RateMyMon channel in the Discord. I check both options every single time that I come to record one of these videos, so that's the only way to go about those are the only ways to try and get your Pokemon submitted for this. Huge thank you to all my channel members. It really means a lot to me you guys want to show your support financially, despite there being no paid rewards for members. And as always, I thank you all for watching and hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.